We're starting the tractate of Bava Metzia. And usually when we start a tractate, we begin by just revising the verses from the Torah that apply to that tractate. And they normally relied on, by the way, in the first few Mishnayot. And one of the interesting things about Bava Metzia is that it does not really refer back to a verse from the Torah, to a pasuk, although it does refer back to the end of the previous tractate, Bava Kama. And we've said before that the three first tractates of the order of Nezikin of damages, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Batra, they were originally one whole. So it's not a coincidence that the discussion about sawdust at the end of the previous tractate, who owns the sawdust that a carpenter generates when he's working for a client? Does the client own the sawdust, or does the carpenter own the sawdust? This question is expressed much more powerfully and much more, I'm going to say archetypally. In the first Mishnah of the new tractate, we have the archetypal question about ownership and judgment. Shnaim ochazim b'talit, ze omer ani mitzatiha, v'ze omer ani mitzatiha. Two people are holding a cloak. So they're both holding an object. And one of them says, I found it, in which case he owns it. The other says, I found it, in which case he owns it. And they're both holding it. And we've said before, by the way, that picking something up, if it's a movable object, does convey title, but they both picked it up. So what are we going to do? And the Mishnah continues. V'ze omer, let's keep ze omer kula sheli. One of them swears, it's all mine. This seems to be a different case. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. Ze omer kula sheli. V'ze omer kula sheli. So one of them says it's all mine, and the other says it's all mine. Interestingly, Maimonides in this case produces a situation which is not about finding. So when he's discussing the question of all mine, he brings the situation of some guy in a shop who's actually sold the cloak to two people. What does that mean? Well, some guy came into the shop and said, oh yeah, I'll buy that cloak. Here's the money. And then he walks out. And another guy rushes in and says, oh, I'm buying that cloak. Here's the money. Puts it on the counter. I'll be back later to pick it up, and rushes out. So the first person actually paid for the cloak at the request of the seller. The second one just put the money on the counter without, if you like, the seller received this money unwillingly. And of course he intended to return it, but then he ends up forgetting. He forgets the identities of these two people. So as far as the seller is concerned, he has sold all of the cloak to one person and he's received the money for it, but he can't remember which one. That's, for the Rambam, the situation of someone who says, I found it. And sorry, it's all mine. And the other says, it's all mine. They both have a perfect claim to this object, but we don't know whose claim is correct. So what are we going to do? We're going to make a really interesting oath. This one is going to swear that he doesn't own less than half of it. He's going to swear, in other words, that he owns half or more. He doesn't own less than half of it. Really interesting oath, because we are not asking him to give up his claim. We're not asking him to lie to himself when he makes this claim. He's going to swear, I don't own less than half of it. So I'm not renouncing my claim to the whole cloak, but I am only referring to half of it. And the other one will do the same. And the other one is going to swear that he doesn't own less than half of it, i.e., he owns at least half of it. Ve yachaloku, and then they split it. So we are going to split. And this Mishnah, the judgment of the Mishnah, that they're going to split it, I think that is pretty logical and obvious. There is no surprise. There's no surprise in the judgment of the Mishnah that they're going to split. But the oath is very significant. Let's look at what the Rambam says about the oath. From our principles, Ki hanishba hanotel shum davar bishvuato lo yishava al yoter mima shera'ui lito. Someone who swears that he's going to, and who's going to take something with his oath, as a result of that oath, he's going to be allowed to take. He shouldn't swear about more than he'll be allowed to take. He shouldn't be allowed to swear about more than he's going to take. Therefore, the Rambam explains, he swears he doesn't have less than half. He doesn't swear that all of it belongs to him, since he's only taking half of it. And then he says, Ve'al eluha dinim kulam takish vetidon. And on all of these arguments, you can argue and you can judge. I think this means you can discuss. And of course, we can't help observing that this oath, he doesn't own less than half of it. This oath opens himself up psychologically to the other person's narrative. Not only does he not swear about something he's not going to take, he doesn't swear in a way that makes the other person look like a liar. We've made two oaths which are mutually compatible. They've sworn, I don't own less than half of it. I own at least half of it. They've made two oaths which allow them both to appear in court without calling the other one a liar. Their original statement, Kula Sheli, it's all mine. And the other one says, Kula Sheli, it's all mine. They've backed off. In psychological terms, they backed off a little bit from that original statement. Now they're saying, gosh, I own at least half of it. Maybe it's all mine, but I'm opening the possibility that maybe it isn't. And we're doing this, by the way, just for the amount which is disputed. So let's say, for example, let's keep going on. Let's go on in the Mishnah. So one says it's all mine, and the other says it's half mine. Well, at this point, only the half is disputed. Only the half is disputed. So that is what we are going to split, and that is what we are going to swear on. So the one that says, oh, it's all mine, swears he doesn't own less than 3/4. And the one who says it's half mine swears that he doesn't own less than 1/4. And this one takes 3/4 and the other takes 1/4. So we keep to the same type of financial settlement, and we keep to the same type of psychological settlement as well. Each one makes an oath, but they make oaths which are mutually compatible, which don't trample on the narrative of the other side. And we're seeing that when we come out of court, the amount of money we come out of court with is not 100% of the result. That how we feel when we come out of court is just as important. Interestingly, the Mishnah seems to recognize this. It seems to recognize the feelings of the people involved just as much as it recognizes the financial settlement.